Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Welcome to part 2 of our Pop Culture Retro podcast with the legendary Matthew Labyorteaux. Now we'd like to talk a little bit about your gaming history. I mean, I looked it up and I couldn't believe that you held or hold, I'm not sure, several world records in some major video games. I mean, that's unbelievable. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
First of all, Jonathan, I'm extraordinarily insulted. I still hold several world records.
How dare you? I'm sorry. Okay, that's great.
How dare you, sir? I'm out.
I apologize. I humbly apologize.
Yeah, I guess I was one of the OGs of video gaming. Well, I just, the age. I happened to be that perfect age where it was the birth of the video game industry, and it's my stepkids and my nephews and my nieces all play video games. And every now and again, they'll look at me and say, "What the hell do you know about video games?" And I just kind of, what am I going to say? I just have to laugh to myself. But yeah.
Did you get started?
The panels, right? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because did you hit arcades? I mean, is that where you started? It was in the arcade environment?
No, I think back then, and again, Ike and I are similar enough in age that for me anyway, it started with, I think, God, I might be getting my years mixed up, but I think did the Atari consoles come before the arcade machines really hit, or maybe a little bit? It was the arcade machines, I guess.
And then I think the arcade machines first, and then
and then we got the home consoles that were much more dumbed down graphically, which is saying a lot because back then, Pong and Space Invaders were pretty basic.
Yeah.
And then it went from Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and Galaxian. Missile Command was one of my favorites back then. I was a Pac-Man champion. I still have the Pac-Man machine that I won in a competition. And then it went to the early, sort of the next iteration of gaming for me anyway, was online gaming. But back then it was very early internet, and you couldn't really play peer-to-peer games. It just wasn't a great experience until there was a protocol called Kali, K-A-L-I. I remember using. It was the first generation of internet-to-internet protocol. And one of my best friends for my life is a guy named Josh Bell. He's a brilliant violinist for people that listen to classical music. And he and I grew up playing games, and it really cemented our friendship with each other because he lived in New York, I lived in LA, but we could connect over the internet or over a modem with these games. And that was sort of in the Doom, Quake, Duke Nukem era of maybe second, third. It's, after the home, the arcade games, and it was more online shooter playing versus one of your friends, and then that was just an amazing time as well. God, the amount of hours and years that I spent that I want back.
Yeah, that was part of my problem. I experienced an obsessive compulsive moment getting a Super Nintendo and playing a Nintendo 2, and finally saying, okay, I'm going to find out what this gaming stuff is all about, and I'm going to dedicate myself to Super Mario Brothers and see if I really find it as fun as I think I'm going to. And I kid you not, all of a sudden one night about 3:00 in the morning, I looked at myself and I had an ashtray back when I was a young dumb smoker. I had an ashtray full of cigarette butts. I had five empty bottles of wine next to my chair. I hadn't shaved for 3 days, and my beard was growing out, and I was sweating because I couldn't get to that next level. And I said, this is not good for me.
Yeah.
And it literally unplugged it, ended up giving it away to a nephew, and I never went back until Grand Theft Auto 4. And then I had another indulgent period of time with that. But I just couldn't. I just knew I would never stop playing. I just was not going to stop playing. So
It was sort of Ray Milland Lost Weekend, right?
yeah. Oh yeah. No, completely. Yes, absolutely. Completely.
I remember for video games, there were sort of the peaks and valleys, but the real peak moments that stood out was playing, Pac-Man for the first time. You're like, wow, this is just revolutionary. Then I actually played in a Centipede World Championships in Chicago, the first, and I guess they have World Championships nowadays, but back then it was the first one for a long time. And then online gaming, and another moment that I will never forget. It was just blow you away kind of moment, was my friend Josh. He was in New York. I was in LA, living in Pasadena, and there was a game called Descent that was sort of a niche game. Not a lot of people played it. Made a lot of people sick, actually, because it was a 360 rotational game. So instead of Quake or Duke Nukem, where you're running around with a gun trying to kill somebody or play 1v1 with your friend, Descent, what you were in a craft, in a mine shaft, in a hollowed out planet. So you had to use a joystick because you could spin and rotate 360. So it would become really disorienting, and a lot of people would get nauseous playing the game. We loved it. And it was one of the first games that you connect modem v modem. So my phone would reach out to his, and it had that old 14.4 or 28.8 modem where it go right?
Yep.
And it's like you're dating yourself if you know that sound.
Oh, absolutely.
And then I remember we both got a separate phone line installed because we didn't have cell phones back then, and we wanted to be able to talk while we're playing the game. So now we have two phone lines just to play this stupid game. And I remember being in my ship, and another ship popped on the screen in front of me, and I said, I'm in the game. We connected. I see a ship in front of me. Is that you? And the ship moved, and I went, oh my God, it just moved. And he said, yeah, that was me. I just moved it with my joystick. And it was like going into the Matrix for the first time. Right? It was it was mind blowing that I was now virtually playing with my friend that was in New York, across the country, playing this game. And we hung up and played for 6-7 straight hours. And it was just a game changer.
Speaking of your friend Josh and games, I mean, I have to hear. I heard this great Crystal Caliburn story that I have to hear.
So Crystal Caliburn, nobody knows what Crystal Caliburn is. Crystal Caliburn was this very obscure 1990s video pinball game, and much by accident, I was living in California. I had this couple, Jim and Craig, that lived. One was a lawyer, one was a pilot. Sweet guys, became dear friends of mine, and our dogs loved each other. We go on walks every day, and they had this game that they bought at, I don't know, Circuit City or whatever was the big store at that time, and it was on a little tiny floppy disk that was like 3 1/4 floppy disk, and I was playing on my 386 DX, whatever, even before Pentium computers. That's really dating me, going way back. And they said, yeah, we bought this game. We didn't really like it. You want it? So I said, sure. And I plugged it into my computer, downloaded it, and started playing it. And I always love pinball, and this was a video pinball game. So I started playing, and then I found out that one of my best friends, Josh, played it as well. And we started this competition, and it was just pure score. Just, what is your score? What is my score? But you had to play it for massive amounts of time, the hours that you had to put into it to try to break the high score. And at any moment, if your rhythm got off, or the ball would just go thunk, and then the next ball would go thunk, game over. So you'd be playing for 4 straight hours, and you'd be within 2 million points of his record, and you'd get a bad bounce, the ball would, and game over. And it was just absolutely heartbreaking. And then, of course, you had to, you can't stop there. You got to break the record. So you play for another 4 hours straight. But not only 4 hours straight, 4 hours straight where you're not blinking. Your eyeballs are not getting any, liquid along them, right? It's like Clockwork Orange.
I was just gonna say, yeah, Clockwork Orange with the little cages holding your eyelids open. Yeah,
but
wow.
It was just such a test of endurance and focus and concentration. I think that's what turned us both on. And we would just go back and forth and back and forth. And then what developed was the way you revealed that you broke the other one's score became really delicious and sweet. Where you couldn't just call him and say, hey, by the way, your score was 1 billion points. I just got 1.5 billion points. We would fax each other. The game had a printout, like a verification system. It was interesting. They don't really, the only game I ever played that had this, where you would get like a verification report and the whole game was based on, it was called Crystal Caliber. And it was based on the King Arthur caliber and the sword. And you would collect the Holy Grails, and however many Holy Grails you got was sort of a indication of how well you did in the game. So I got 10 Holy Grails and I got 2 billion points. So I would fax him my printout sheet, and then that he's in New York with his girlfriend at the time, and she'd yell across the apartment, Josh, you got a fax. And then I'd hear, I just imagine him going over, seeing the fax, no. And then he'd do the same thing to me. But we would also try to sabotage if one of us was having a really great day, or he just won a Grammy, or something ridiculous like that. Then I would save it so that when he was just in the highest high, I would say, oh, by the way, I broke your score last night. And it was just like, it was amazing how much weight we gave to this record that nobody gave a heck about. And we might have been the only 2 people in the world playing this game, but we played it for 20 straight years, going back and forth and back and forth. And at one time, he wound up just getting the outright record. He was up to I think it was 11 billion points. And it must have taken him 8 to 10 straight hours of playing nonstop. You could pause it, but then when you unpaused it, you kind of had to get back into the rhythm. It was very difficult getting back in the flow when you paused it. So you were really taking a risk if you had to go to the bathroom or something. And
wow.
And he just broke my will. I just couldn't believe that he had set the bar that high, and I was a broken man. And I just said, I got to give it to you. I didn't think you could beat me, but you beat me. And that happened for about 2 straight years. I was living in New York at the time. And I remember it was a Memorial Day. No, it was 4th of July weekend. And I sat on my couch in my apartment in New York and just was thinking about, whatever. And there was the hot dog eating contest coming up in Coney Island that I always enjoyed going to watch. And I was going to hop on the subway and go watch that. And I thought, you know what? Either I'm going to break the record during this 4-day weekend, or I'm going to die trying. And I really felt like that. I felt like I was going to go down with the ship, man. And I wrote, I still have the piece of paper. I wrote 20 billion points as sort of my vision quest mantra thing, my goal. And I put it on my computer, and I set up my video camera because I had to have video proof of this. There was no way I was going to take my word for it. And I played nonstop for 3.5 days. And I finally quit. I just had to quit. It was too much. And my final score was 75 or 80 billion points.
Wow.
And I just demolished. I got in a zone like I've never been in my entire life. And I demolished the score. And I actually found certain Easter eggs about the game that nobody had ever seen, because nobody had ever gotten that high. And to this day, I'm still the official world record holder for Crystal Caliburn by leaps and bounds. And I applied actually for people that are really into the minutiae of video games. There's a website called Twin Galaxies that sort of billed itself as the official video game records website for a long time. And I contacted them and petitioned them to get that world record for that video game. And they gave me a little bit of a runaround and said, well, it was a computer game, not a console game or an old school arcade stand-up game. And they just wouldn't validate my score. It was kind of heartbreaking because I just, just for giggles, I would have loved to have had an official, I can go on a website and look it up. But actually that website is now in a little bit of hot water with the whole Billy Mitchell Pac-Man, if people follow that. And they were obviously doing some things they shouldn't be doing and fudging records. There was some fraud going on, but so forget them. I don't want my record on their site anyway.
Yeah.
But whoever watches this knows that you have the world record. So
they know. And I, through sleuthing on the internet over the years, there's some guy in Japan that actually broke Josh's record. I think he got 13 or 14 billion. I obliterated that one, but I tried to figure out a way to contact the guy to say, hey, as a fellow Crystal Caliburn player, congrats or whatever. And it's just got a little too difficult. And it's just too many years in the past now.
And to let him know that he doesn't really hold the record.
just to be able to strut around a little bit and show him that I'm dominant and I'm the alpha male.
Oh my god!
But I gotta say, that game might have single-handedly cemented this lifelong friendship with my buddy Josh, just because of the intense nature of it and the back and forth. And we're both two of the most competitive people you ever meet. But we're also both, if somebody beats you, you got to applaud it and you got to let them have their moment in the sun. But then you'll kill yourself trying to take that moment in the sun away, a week later. And he recently got married and I was best man at his wedding and I gave my best man speech. And of course, it was something like, Josh, you've made flowery going on about all his accomplishments and you've won Grammys. And you own this $20 million Stradivarius violin. You played in some of the most amazing and important classical music venues in the world. Currently, you're the second best Crystal Caliburn player in the world, which is a fine accomplishment and something you should be very proud of.
Right.
And I just had to get it in. And just, God bless him. He can have a laugh and, but it really, looking back, that game was instrumental in our friendship. It really was.
God, that is fascinating.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I just trying to research it, and there's like nothing. There's a one paragraph description of it, and it even said it was like a 1.5 or 4 megabyte game or something like that. I'm sure it had to be more than that, but I mean, I just technically, if you played the same game for 20 years, is this the same original version of it, or was there another like version that played the same way that you used?
So this game, it originally they had a Mac component and a Windows component. And Josh back in the day played on Mac and I was on Windows. I've been a Mac guy for the last 25 years. But for this game, I was playing on a PC. And they then later on came out with a web-based version of it that wasn't very good and wasn't as robust as the little floppy disk game. But just because I love the game so much, and it was, even when it was released, it was an obscure game. It was never a very popular game. I still, in my garage, it's 30 feet from where I'm sitting in my sound booth in my garage, in my recording booth. I still kept the original PC that has the game loaded on it because I know once that's gone, I'll never ever have the chance to play the game again. And God forbid, Josh Bell comes up to me one day and says, guess what? I just got 87 billion points. I needed to know that I still have the ability to get back on that game. I'll just buy a monitor and get some legacy adapter or something on eBay that I'll have to pay $500 for. And I can still play the game and try to get the world record back. That's how that's how screwed up I am in the head about certain things.
Man, that's a dedication that I don't have that kind of dedication to my wife. But I'll work on it. I'll work on it. You set the
there are
bar very high.
priorities, Ike, so.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
I'd like to conclude now, since you just mentioned your booth there. Let's conclude here, where you're doing voiceover. Like you and Ike had that in common. You both transitioned into a lot of voice work, and you've been on some like really great titles I've seen here, like Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Star Wars. How'd you get into that, and what are you up to now with all that?
Well, I will give a big shout out to my my lifelong friend Ike Eisenmann, because Ike really is the one that got me into voice work and really got me started on my voice career. So Ike, I owe you a great debt for that.
Well, you're more than welcome, and you contributed to our business in ways that are beyond description. I think we had a really fun and amazing working relationship together doing that, and I was so grateful you came on board to be a part of what we were doing. So
yeah, well, thank you. I still consider those years of working with Ike and his group doing voiceover work for film and TV projects as some of the most fun years of my life. We just had a blast working on that. And then all of animation stuff. I've done my share of animation. It's not really my forte. There's some guys that are just such amazing voice actors that can do voices that I can't do. For me, what I bring to it is just an honesty and sincerity and an actor's approach to it. So whenever I do an animation show like Yu-Gi-Oh, I always play the young, really courageous young lead that's just optimistic and just doing it for the all the right reasons, kind of thing. And that's been a lot of fun. And I did one of the versions of the Star Wars. They were trying to sort of take on World of Warcraft, which was another, God, I didn't even talk about World of Warcraft. I got deep in that rabbit hole when that game came out for a lot of years. I just loved that game. But Star Wars, The Old Republic, and yeah, it's fun, a lot of fun projects. And thank goodness I have this well-equipped, state-of-the-art booth in my garage, so I can work from home and just get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, and come to work.
just go down there. Now, I want to know, is there any way that I want to ask, any way people follow you on social media, or you don't do that?
You know what? I'm not a big social media person. I marvel at my kids and my nieces and nephews and the fluency that they have in that language. It's just something that's lost on me, and I didn't really have any reason to try to learn that language. But I certainly don't, especially for something like Little House on the Prairie and fans that reach out and just grew up with this show and loved it. I'm not a hermit. I don't shun things like that. I think it was an absolutely wonderful way to grow up, and I'm very blessed to have been able to have that as a kid. I love it when somebody comes up and says, and I'll tell you what, the way that people come up to me oftentimes over the years has been because I was a famous kid, but I wasn't the most famous kid. A lot of people would walk right by me and not know who the hell I was unless you watched Little House or maybe another show that I was on. And a lot of times people over the years will come up to me and say, "Man, I know who you are. You look so familiar. Did you date my sister? Or did we play t-ball together, or what the hell?" And then I'll say, "Well, I was an actor. Maybe that's it." And I'll say, "Oh, what show were you on?" Little House on the Prairie. And every now and again, they'll go, "Yeah, no, that's not it. I didn't watch that show. What else?" But a lot of the time when I say Little House, they'll say, "Oh my God, that's why. That's why." Because when I was 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, I would come home at night. We'd all have dinner with my family and we'd watch a show, and Little House on the Prairie was a show we watched. So they look at me as though I was a member of their family. I was a kid that they grew up with. I wasn't just an actor on a show, because the show meant so much to them. And I mean, that's a wonderful thing. How can you not just just be touched by something like that. So although I don't really pursue a lot of those things, I don't go to fan conventions or anything like that. But whenever I meet somebody and they want to talk about it and they want to say, hey, just so you know, it was a big part of my childhood. I love hearing that. That's a wonderful thing.
Oh yeah.
As well, you
I mean,
should. I mean, you're a big part of my childhood. I know, and I watched you in all the things, and Ike as well.
Yeah, we have we share that, because I mean the same thing happens to me with Witch Mountain, of course, and I think I don't know if you ever quite went through this, but I know there was a period of time in my early 20s where I kind of like I withdrew from it because it was just too difficult and awkward to deal with the attention from it. But now it absolutely means the world to me when I hear people talk about what that film, those films, I can say those films meant to them. And I even have the thing about Little House, though, is it is really, I mean, more than a phenomenon in so many people's lives, because I actually know people who are only fans of mine because I was in an episode or 2 episodes of Little House. I mean, that's
Wow.
that's
Yeah.
it. They don't know me from anything else, and they actually go all googly over that connection because they are such huge fans of that show and know it like the back of their hand and watch the episodes over and over and over and over again. And I just, so,
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we're both extremely fortunate. We've got these incredible legacies as, part of our professional lives. And I'm very much as touched and grateful as you are. I think it's pretty extraordinary for both of us.
Yeah, and I actually wouldn't have thought that because although Little House was such a popular show, I mean, Escape from Witch Mountain, if you were a kid of that era, that was your favorite movie growing up. That was it. Because there weren't, Disney really were the only kid-centric films back then. Nowadays, everything's about, everyone from 18 below. You can't turn something on Netflix or Prime without it being about a main character that's 17 years old. But back then, Disney was sort of the only game in town for that sort of thing. And everyone loved Witch Mountain. Everybody wanted to be you in Witch Mountain and be able to levitate stuff. And if you're a sci-fi fan, who in the world hasn't seen Wrath of Khan? And even if you're not a huge Star Trek fan, if you've seen one of them, it would have been Wrath of Khan, because that's sort of everyone's top list of best Star Trek movies of them all. And I'm a Star Trek fan from the age of 7, 8, 9 years old, the original TV series and reruns.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm very grateful to have been a part of both of them, and it's funny because Wrath of Khan was the smallest part I've ever had that's gotten the most attention of anything that I've ever done. It really is kind of on a par with Witch Mountain, but
hey man,
no, I mean,
you stayed at your post. You didn't leave your post. You gave your life up for it, but you stayed and you saved the Enterprise. So don't ever forget that, my friend.
I know. Well, my red collar was a giveaway that I wasn't going to survive, but that's all okay. That's all okay.
Oh man.
Well,
fun.
I think unless you have any other questions, Ike, that.
No, man, I think we covered it. That was really a blast. So thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. And anytime you want to come back, you're definitely by all means welcome. And this is a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun talking. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's great catching up with my dear friend Ike. Great to meet you, Jonathan. And it's a blast talking about the old nostalgic 80s days, right? I could talk about them all day long. So yeah, perhaps we'll talk about something else next time.
Yeah, thank you all for tuning in to Pop Culture Retro. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, Ike, and thank you again, Matthew.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.